Okay, guys, we're going into a new lesson where we are in Unit 5, Lesson 4. So we're going to discuss a new way of factoring today. As you can see below, we have problems where we have an exponent of 3 and then a constant after that. So the theme of today is called sum of two cubes or difference of two cubes. So before we go into this, you'll notice the numbers down here are and the 8 are up here as well. These numbers are called perfect cubes. Those numbers are numbers that when you take the cube root of them, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., etc. So please have those memorized, and they even go up to, notice right here is 1,000. The cube root of 1,000 is 10. So here is the formulas that we're going to be using today for sum of two cubes and difference of two cubes. So let's take a look, and we'll use the formulas. By the way, you'll notice that the formulas look almost exactly the same. The difference is the original problem will either have a plus or minus in it. And then notice the highlighted areas, the signs that I highlighted, that's the difference between the two formulas. So we are going to turn this into this, a binomial followed by a binomial that's timesing or multiplying by a trinomial. All right, so if we take a look at example A, we have x to the third plus 64. So we call the A for our formula, that's going to simply be x. And then the B is the cube root of 64, which is 4. Okay? So let me clarify that a little bit here in my writing. So to find the B, that would be the cube root of 64, which is 4. Remember, 4 times 4 times 4, also known as 4 to the third power, is 64. So we're going to start plugging into the formula now. So I start right here and I follow along as I go through. It says A plus B, so A plus B, close parentheses, open parentheses, followed by A squared, and then a minus. Where it says AB, that means A times B, so x times 4 is 4x. And then a plus sign, and then b squared, that means take the 4 squared and get 16. You will not write 4 squared. You must do the math. 4 squared gets 16, okay? So 4 squared is where I got the 16. Okay, let's try another one. This one's a difference of cubes. Notice the minus sign. So the A here is x. The B is the cube root of 27, which is 3. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So I'm going to use x and 3 to go into my formula. So A minus B, parentheses, A squared plus A times B, that would be x times 3 is 3x, plus the B squared, so that's 3 squared is 9. Okay, letter C, a little tricky because we have that 8 out in front. So A here would be the cube root of 8, which would be 2. And attach an x to it, of course, because it says add 8x to the third. So A is 2x, and then B is, just like the last problem, B is 3. And now we're going to use our first formula, so A plus B, parentheses, A squared, so be careful there. That would be 2x squared, so that'll be 4x for ax squared, and then minus a times b, so 2x times 3 is 6x. Oh, I forgot to put the squared here. And then plus the b squared, so that'll be 3 squared is 9. Letter D, the a, if that shows 64x cubed, that should be 4x for a. And then the b is, remember the cube root of 1 is 1, so b is 1. And we have a minus sign, so we're going to carefully use the difference of cubes. So that'll be a minus b, parentheses. So that'll be a squared, so that's 4x squared, so that's 16x squared, plus a times b, 4x times 1 is 4x, and then plus the b squared, so 1 squared is 1. Letter E, they throw a curveball at you. 54 and 250 are not cubes. They're not on our list above, but this is factoring, and we should always be on the lookout no matter what to see if we have a GCF first, which we do here. I know a common factor that can go into those guys is 2, because they're both even numbers. Then divide by 2 to have 27 x to the third minus 125 after dividing by 2. So this 2, you can cross it off. It does not have an x with it. Not really needed. Or keep, actually, no, let's keep it there. So the a here, we look at 27x cubed. So the cube root of 27 we already know. We've done it like 3 times already. That would be 3x. And then the b is the cube root of 125 is 5. So now we're going to use the formula, the difference of cubes, carry down the 2. So a minus b, parentheses. So that'll be a squared next. So that's, we're going to be careful here, 3 squared. That'll be 9x squared. And then plus a times b, 3x times 5 is 15x, and then a plus b squared, so that's 25. Letter F, we actually have a GCF first again, it's 8. So then divide by 8 to have x cubed minus 8. So a is just an x here. B is, the cube root of 8 is 2. So we're going to use the difference of cubes again. So bring down your 8. Then you have a minus b. Then you have a squared plus a times b, so x times 2 is 2x. And then plus b squared, so that's 2 squared, which is 4. Okay, try this one on your own. Okay, so a here should be 3x. A is 3x, b is 1. So difference of cubes here because of the minus sign. So a minus b, parentheses, a squared, be careful, that's going to be 3x squared, which is 9x squared. Then plus a times b, so 3x times 1 is 3x. And then plus b squared, so 1 squared is 1. Okay, next up, we're going to go into some solving now. So we're going to take what we just learned and really ramp it up. We're going to learn our new way of factoring to now solve equations and find out what x actually is. You definitely want to write small here because of when we're going to be solving. The factoring itself is going to be not much work. The solving the trinomial, we're going to have to be using the Pythagorean theorem. So this guy here, a is x, b is 3, so we're going to use the sum of cubes. So that would be a plus b then a trinomial, a squared minus a times b, so x times 3, and then plus the b squared, so that's 3 squared is 9. So now we got to go further. We have to solve this. Now this guy, the first one, the x plus 3, we can easily say that x is negative 3. That's a no-brainer. But what about this trinomial? This trinomial cannot be factored. What we need to do is use the Pythagorean theorem to find out what the other x's are. So a is 1, b negative 3, c is 9. So we're going to start off with negative b. B is a negative, so double negatives change to a 3. Plus minus, and by the way, if you don't remember the Pythagorean theorem, look it up, write it down on this page in the packet so you can see it as we're doing it. You guys tested on this, so I'm hoping you guys are good, but you need to refresh if you're not. So then we have b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. So remember our steps: multiply, multiply, multiply. Negative 3 squared will be 9. Negative 4 times 1 times 9 will be negative 36. Divided by 2 times 1 is 2. And then we want to subtract in the radical. 9 minus 36 is negative 27. Now we want to simplify the negative 27, square root of negative 27. Remember, when you have a negative inside a square root, an I is going to come out. And then we got to think of what are we going to do with this? We got to think what perfect square multiplies into 27. That would be 9. Such as square root of 9 times the square root of 3. And then you can square root this 9 to get 3. So if the square root of 9 is 3 and there's an I out there already, call it 3i. And then carry over the square root of 3 and the divided by 2. So there's your other 2 answers. You technically have 3 answers in this problem: negative 3 and the 2 that you get in the fraction. Okay, letter B. So A is x, B is 4. We're going to use the difference of cubes. So A minus B, then a trinomial, a squared plus x times 4 is 4x, then plus the b squared, so that's 4 squared is 16. Okay, now it is factored. Now let's get some answers. This first one, x minus 4 is 0, therefore x must be equal to 4. Now for your second one, the trinomial, always go to the Pythagorean theorem. So negative b plus minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. We're going to multiply 1, 2, 3 times. 4 squared gets 16, then minus 4 times 1 times 16 is 64. And then in the radical, it'll become the square root of 16 minus 64 is negative 48. So we got a negative here. So an I must come out of the radical. And then we got to worry about simplifying the square root of 48. what perfect square multiplies evenly into 48? That would be 16, such as square root of 16 times the square root of 3. And then you can take that square root of 16 and get 4. So if the square root of 16 is 4 with an I, we'll call it 4i, then drag over the square root of 3. Now we can go further here. This fraction can be reduced. Look at these three numbers here. These two numbers can be divided by 2. So let's do that. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Bring over your plus minus. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and drag it down your I root 3. So there are your other two answers. All right, next up, letter C is difference of cubes again. So here, A is 2x and B is 5. Let me show you a little hint here, a little bit of a time saver. So you can actually go right to your binomial right away. So 8x, the cube root of 8x cubed is 2x. Bring down your minus, and then the cube root of 125 is 5. Okay, so there's your A, there's your B. So then, what do we have next is ax squared. So that would be 2x squared, so that's 4x squared. And then plus a times b, so 2x times 5 is 10x. Then a plus b squared, so that'll be 5 squared is 25. Okay, again, we have equations, it's answer time. Now the first one, let's set this guy equal to 0. So, and solve for x, we're going to add 5, and then divide by 2. And you can call it 2.5. And then what do we do with the other one? The trinomial, you should be thinking again, Pythagorean theorem. So negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. Let's do our multiplying. 1, 2, 3. So 10 squared will be 100. And then minus 4 times 4 is 16 times 25 is 400. On the bottom, 2 times 4 gets 8. In the radical, 100 minus 400, that would be the square root of negative 300. And then from there, simplify, we have a negative, so pull out an I. Can you think of what square root of 300 can be broken up into? It's easier than it looks. Should be thinking square root of 100 times square root of 3. So that square root of 100 will be 10. So I times 10 will be 10i root 3 over 8. And then if we take a look at these two numbers here, these two numbers here, they can divide by 8. Not perfectly, you still get a fraction. So that'll be negative 10 over 8 is negative 5/4. And then the other 10 over 8 is 5/4. Carry over the I root 3. And since they both have a 4 in the bottom, you can actually put them back together. would be over 4 on the bottom, negative 5 plus minus 5I root 3. So there's your other two answers to go with that 2.5. And last one. Definitely not a perfect cubes. I noticed a GCF first of 7. Divide by 7 to have 8x cubed minus 1. So the 7 is not going to help us get an answer because it does not have an x with it, so we might as well cross it off. So the a here is going to be 2x, then the b is going to be 1, and we're in the difference of cubes, so that would be, so it's a minus b, and then a squared, plus a times b, 2x times 1 is 2x, then a plus, the b squared, that's 1 squared is 1. Okay, now let's go to solving. The first one, set it equal to 0, and solve for x. We would add 1, and then divide by 2, and get 1/2. Now the trinomial, just like the past 3 problems, what do? Pythagorean theorem. So negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. So let's multiply our 1, 2, 3 times. So 2 squared will be 4. Minus 4 times 1 is 16. Divided by 2 times 4, 8 is 8. In the radical, clean that up. 4 minus 16 will be the square root of negative 12. All right, simplify that radical now. You should notice you have a negative inside, so an I will pull out. And then you got to be thinking, how do I simplify the square root of 12? What perfect square multiplies into that? Should be thinking 4, such as 4 times 3, or square root of 4 times square root of 3. And then now you can simplify the square root of 4 to be 2. So if it's I times 2, we'll call it 2I. Carry over your square root of 3 over 8. And since we simplified the radical, we will try to reduce this fraction. Notice negative 2 and 2 can divide with 8. So negative 2 divided by 8 is negative 1/4. Plus minus 2 over 8, also 1/4. And by the way, when we have the 1/4, since the I root 3, I was just trying to erase the I there, not the I, the 1, so that's what you're left with. And since both denominators have 4, you can put it together as one fraction. So negative 1 plus minus I root 3 over 4. And that's the other two answers to the problem right here to go along with your 1/2. And then we're done. Lesson's over. Have a good day.